Good morning, everybody. Coming to you from Mexico. A little about me. I've been helping people with their English for about 4 years with real conversation. I don't really prepare classes. I'm not really like a teacher per se. I'm more like a coach. And I've also studied languages myself. I just took the C1 test for Spanish and I passed the speaking, the listening, and the reading. I need to work on my formal essay skills, but basically I consider myself about C1 level, which is about fluent in Spanish. There's always another level. It's difficult to understand certain accents or people who mumble, but and I'm still learning new words every day, almost every day. But that's the journey with languages. It's a lifelong journey. Even in English, I'm still learning. So I've also racked up millions of XP on Duolingo, so I know that route. I'm not necessarily suggesting that you can. I didn't actually study Spanish on Duolingo. I've learned a lot of Russian, mostly Russian, a little bit of Portuguese. Um, so I have a bit of experience learning languages and helping people learn languages. And my theories about it are a little different from the mainstream trending theories. A lot of people will tell you online, obviously, there are many people who will try to tell you you can be fluent in less than a year. It's really just not true. Maybe if you were a native Spanish speaker who wanted to learn Italian or Portuguese, maybe you could get in 1 year to a relatively conversational level. But anyway, just throwing that right out the window, like it takes years. I'm not here to sell you a lie. It takes a lot of time, and people will tell you that the Foreign Service Institute numbers are not accurate, and that is true. But they will tell you that those numbers are overestimates, but that is not true. They are underestimates because they are not including homework time, and also a lot of those students spend a lot of time immersed or consuming the media from their target language. So I would say at least double the numbers that they tell you. Anyway, so it takes thousands of hours, probably 2 or 3 thousand hours to get to like barely fluent, maybe conversational in Spanish for the average American. And you could double that for some of the harder languages. Um, but it's not bad news because if you're doing it right, it sounds corny, but the journey should be enjoyable. You should have a passion for this. So maybe the number one thing, if not, it might be the number one thing is motivation. How do you stay motivated? Because a lot of people will get excited. I want to learn a language. I'm going to do it. Even people who are trying to learn English, a lot of them really feel like they need to. Economically, their lives will be improved. They'll have so many more opportunities. But even for them, the motivation is tricky sometimes because you don't know if you're seeing progress, if you're doing it right, or it could just be plain boring. So my theories are they revolve a lot around the idea of listening, lots of passive input, a good bit of reading, but especially listening, because that is what babies do. Before a baby says a single word, they will have listened to thousands of hours. People think children are so good at learning languages, but I've taught children English. They're not. Their brains aren't special. Maybe slightly more elastic, only if they're interested. Really, they don't have the same level of focus or discipline that adults do. They can't sit for hours and memorize vocabulary like we can, but they do take things in. and they spend thousands of hours as infants listening to their native language, and that is why the grammar is so natural for them, and that is why the accent is perfect. So obviously, we don't all have that much time, but I like to point out that, and this is still just my theory, it doesn't matter so much whether you're able to understand what you're hearing. So another really trendy theory in language learning today is the idea of comprehensible input. So people suggest that you really focus on listening to material that you understand, that you understand 80 to 90% of what's being said. And I think that's good, but I think it's also good to listen to the language if you understand 0%, because you are taking in those sounds subconsciously, and later when you learn those words, you already know them. Now you know what they mean, but like an infant, you've already heard them hundreds of times or thousands of times, depending on the words. So you will naturally know how to pronounce it. You'll say it yourself, and you'll say, that doesn't sound right. Because a lot of people, they don't hardly listen to native content. They don't talk to other native speakers. They're in an echo chamber of second language English, or whatever the language might be. So they get used to hearing certain grammatical mistakes, or they get used to their own accent. And so then they lose the ability to hear the difference when a native speaker says something. And then they have a habit of pronouncing things a certain way. A lot of the words that I go over with my clients are the words that they learned early on, 10, 20 years ago. The most basic words, that, the. People will say the instead of the, because they've said it that way 50,000 times, because it's the second or third most common word in the English language. So my advice to you, when you're driving, when you're working out, when you're washing the dishes, when you're just hanging out, just have your target language. Most of you, for most of you, that would be English. Have it playing. It's okay if your attention goes in and out. You're still going to take in those sounds. Listen, 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 listen. It's the number one thing, is listening.